Hello, BookTube. I want to show you a batch of the reading I'm going to be doing for today and tonight and a bit of tomorrow, starting with 3 paperbacks. And of the 3 paperbacks, 2 are Georges Simenon. There's Maigret and the Headless Corpse. And then there's a book called The Snow Was Dirty. And they're both from Penguin. They're both new Penguin reprints. But one is the slim Maigret police procedural adventure stories that this author used to churn out like butter, and the other is a serious novel with blurbs like you wouldn't believe. Blurbs on this thing. It's blurbed by William Faulkner, Muriel Spark, Peter Ackroyd, Andre Gide, Anita Bruckner, P.D. James, John Gray, John Banville, all calling it a masterpiece. And this has always intrigued me about this kind of author, and about this author in particular. This, when they churn out stuff like this, but they also have ambitions for quote unquote serious literature, and what the difference might be, if any. So I'm very curious to read these 2 back to back and see. And then the other paperback's also a Penguin. It's in this new Pelican reprint series of the Pelican Shakespeare. This is Henry VIII. A play that I absolutely love, even though it's a failure. Dramatically speaking, it's a failure. It has some of the most glorious set pieces in it that I know of in Shakespeare, and a couple of fantastic dramatic turns. The character of Catherine of Aragon in this play is amazingly well done, and so is the character of Cardinal Wolsey. To such an extent that, as I was telling Deb a little earlier today, to such an extent, the scenes themselves are so well done, were so perfectly dramatic in real life, that later dramatists haven't been able to really improve on them much. Shakespeare can't really improve on the role that Catherine of Aragon played in her own divorce from Henry VIII. And a much later movie, a fantastic movie, Anne of a Thousand Days, starring Anthony Quayle as Cardinal Wolsey and Richard Burton as Henry VIII. Oh, what a movie! But in that movie, it's all about the downfall of Cardinal Wolsey and the rise of Anne Boleyn, and there are huge chunks of it that are quoted verbatim from this play because there's no better way to put it. It's the same sort of thing that Shakespeare takes those lines from the sources that he mined for this stuff. But I love Henry VIII, the play. So I was very happy to have a pretty few paperback. And then the next 2 are YA, because I love me my YA. First is a debut. It's this, Sky in the Deep by Adrian Young. And it's, as you can tell from the intanglia on the axe, it is a Viking novel. It's about a young Viking girl who is a warrior who's been fighting her whole life. And it's I gather from the publicity material it's about her adventures, but I am on board, as you know if you watch this channel. I'm on board for anything Viking anyway. And I thanks to BookTube, I pay a lot more attention to YA than I once did. I used to just dismiss it. Now I don't, and have been rewarded with a lot of really interesting reading experiences, including some really good reading experiences. I don't know what this will be. It's a debut novel, so I imagine it will have problems. And I'm worried that one of the problems will be the main character being given superhuman ability in combat, in physical combat. A teenage girl with an axe, no matter how long she's been a practiced warrior, cannot beat an adult male warrior who has also spent his whole life fighting. The physical discrepancy in a warrior culture is simply too great. So I'm hoping that this main character, what's her name? Aelin. I'm hoping that she is agile, that she's not above trickery, that she's a thinker. I'm hoping that that's true, rather than the author is going to ask me to swallow girl power scenes that might work just fine with ray guns, but that don't work at all in hand-to-hand combat with an axe. But we shall see. I will report back. And the other one is also YA. It's a sequel to a book I loved. This is Defy the World. This is Claudia Gray's sequel to her book Defy the Stars, in which a young woman encounters an artificial boy, a cybernetic boy, who has more complexity and more humanity than most of the humans she knows. And that book, Defy the Stars, was terrific. And it ended with these 2 characters about as far apart as you can get, and going in opposite directions, so to speak. I can't imagine what the sequel will do to bring them back together. You have to bring them back together. But I am eager to read this. That's how good a job Claudia Gray did with the first book. That is all of the fiction, I'm afraid. Then we're going to wrap up with a little nonfiction, starting with a book I only recently became aware of. This is Building and Dwelling by the great Richard Sennett, who is this is a study of urban mechanics, urban psychology, the way cities work, and how you can improve the good things and downplay the bad things. And it's going to be fantastic. This guy is an incredible public intellectual, an incredible thinker, who has a long list of great books to his name. It was, again, like I was telling Deb, it amazes me that that a bigger deal isn't made of the fact that Richard Sennett has a new book. And I didn't even know it was coming. So I'm looking forward to it enormously. It looks like it's going to be a comprehensive study of how humans interact with their cities. And I'm always up for that, especially from a friend of some of the greatest urban thinkers of the 20th century. And then we have a sweet tooth of mine that I've mentioned on this channel a few times, presidential writing. And this is by John Shaw, and it's Rising Star, Setting Sun. I think we might have seen an advanced copy of this on the channel before. This is a study of the relationship between John F. Kennedy and Eisenhower, which is a relationship that can be boiled down to one word: hatred. But this book will do a larger, broader job than that. And it's fascinating, because the popular zeitgeist opinion at the time was that there was a drastic passing of the torch. Both men were veterans of World War II. So there wasn't a drastic passing of the torch. And yet the feeling was, one is your father's president and one is your president. And it'll be fascinating to see what this author, I don't know that I know John Shaw. Oh, yes, I do. That's right. We did see this before on this channel. He wrote an earlier book called JFK in the Senate that I was not gentle with. But I can't wait to read this. And then the last one, A Serious Work of History, something that I think I showed on this channel when I got it, but I haven't got to it yet. It's an April release. Most of these are April releases. Terrible, terrible, terrible. That's why I'm going to be getting to them post-haste. And that's this, Apostles of Revolution by the great John Ferling. This is a study of Jefferson, Thomas Paine, and Madison, and the ways that they furthered revolutionary thinking. They embraced it wholeheartedly, rather than being among the majority. The majority of Americans, the American Revolution, did not want the revolution. The majority of them were either neutral or royalists. And they weren't part of that, and there were plenty of Americans who, when the revolution was building and broiling and looked like it was inevitable, there were plenty of Americans who didn't like the state of affairs, but didn't want to break with England anyway. They weren't royalists, but they weren't revolutionaries either. And this is going to be right in the middle of Ferling's wheelhouse, where he delves into the primary documents. He knows these characters better than anybody and comes out with new thinking. And I love that when serious history does that. When serious history, especially on a subject I know really well, presents me with new thinking. So there you have it. That is, we're going to do a pyramid here. This is Monday Reads. This is Apostles of Revolution, Rising Star, Setting Sun, Building and Dwelling, Defy the Worlds. This is Sky in the Deep. There's 2 YA novels. Then Shakespeare's Henry VIII, and 2 novels by Georges Simenon. One that took 3 weeks to write, and one that took 3 months to write. One that's just who is the identity of the headless corpse, and the other that is a serious post-war novel. And we shall see. We shall see how they shake out. But in the meantime, I'm going to sign off, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.